She thought she was the one holding all the cards. She spent 4 months building a case I never once asked to see. And when she finally played her hand, she had no idea that everything she was betting on was paper I had printed myself. My name is Curtis Hale. I'm 47 years old. I run a landscaping and outdoor services company out of Franklin, Tennessee. Residential design, irrigation systems, seasonal maintenance, about 18 accounts year-round, and another 40-odd in the summer months. My wife Jill had worked as the office manager at a dental group on Cool Springs Boulevard for going on 8 years. We met at a mutual friend's backyard cookout in the summer of 2010, got married in 2013 at her parents' place in Murfreesboro, and built a life in a neighborhood off Mac Hatcher Parkway that we'd spent a decade turning into something worth coming home to. Friday nights were takeout and whatever was on HBO. Sunday mornings were her doing the Wordle while I made eggs and complained about the Titans. It was ours. It worked. I want you to know something about me before I get into any of this. I am not a man who looks for problems. I give people the benefit of the doubt longer than I probably should. Keep that in mind. It matters for what comes later. The first sign was small enough that I almost missed it entirely. Early March, a Tuesday evening, I came in from a long day and set my keys on the counter the way I always do. Jill was in the living room on her phone, and the second she heard the back door she stood up and walked toward the kitchen with the phone face down against her thigh. I didn't think much of it. We'd never been the couple that monitored each other's screens. But over the next 2 weeks, the phone was always face down. Not just when I walked in, she started setting it that way at dinner, on the coffee table, on the bathroom counter, when she got up in the middle of the night. Jill had kept that phone face up on the kitchen island every morning for 11 years of marriage. A phone that used to light up constantly, with group texts from her sister and calendar reminders she'd never bothered silencing. Then she put a passcode on it. She'd never had a passcode in our entire marriage. I asked about it, casual as I could manage. She told me the dental practice had updated its security policy, said the office manager had required the whole staff to lock their personal devices because of patient data concerns. It was plausible. I let it go. But I noticed. By the last week of March, she started taking calls outside. Not into another room, outside the house. She'd step onto the deck off the back bedroom, or she'd walk to the far end of the driveway by the mailbox, phone pressed hard against her ear. When she came back in, she was always a little too composed, like she'd spent 60 seconds doing breathing exercises before opening the door. Who was that, I'd ask. Her mother, or Carol from the office, or her book club friend Lindsay planning something for the weekend. I know my wife's voice. 11 years teaches you that. There's a register she uses when she's being straight with me, relaxed, unhurried. She trails off at the ends of sentences. When she came in from those calls, her voice had a tightness underneath the normal tone, like she was performing ease instead of actually feeling it. Then one Friday afternoon in early April, I came home and found Jill at the kitchen table with a manila folder and her laptop open. The second I pushed the back door, she closed the laptop and slid the folder under her arm. "Didn't hear you pull in," she said. "Got the truck washed. What are you working on?" "Just some benefits stuff, open enrollment." I went to pour myself some water, and as I passed the table, I caught 2 words on the edge of a page she hadn't moved fast enough. Initial filing. I turned the faucet on and kept my hands busy and did not let my face do a single thing. That night, I lay next to Jill and listened to her breathe and thought about 11 years. We'd painted the living room 3 different colors before we agreed on something. We'd buried her father in 2019 and my dog of 14 years in 2020. And we'd gotten through both of those things holding on to each other. I had no proof of anything real yet. I had a passcode and some outside calls and 2 words on a piece of paper that could have meant 100 different things. I told myself I was reading into nothing. I didn't believe myself. 2 weeks later, on a Monday morning after Jill left for work, I sat down at my desk and logged into our joint checking account for the first time in probably 2 years. I had no real reason to scrutinize it. Our bills were on autopay. My business had its own accounts, and Jill handled most of the household bookkeeping. She was good at it. I'd always trusted her with it. What I found was careful. That's what stopped me cold. Not a single large transfer, nothing that would have triggered a notification. Over the previous 6 weeks, 5 withdrawals, $300, $450, $275, $350. Each one irregular, none of them matching a bill or subscription I recognized. all routed to an account listed as personal savings JH that I had no access to and had never set up. I sat there with my coffee going cold and felt something settle into the center of my chest, like a stone dropping into still water. That afternoon I called Paul Whitfield, 51, a family law attorney in Nashville I'd stayed close to since we'd both worked at the same equipment rental company in our 20s. I'd been to his wedding. He'd been to mine. I told him everything on the phone, and he listened without interrupting until I finished. "Kurt," he said, and let the line go quiet for a second. "I'm not going to tell you what's happening in your marriage, but I will tell you this. If even some of what you're describing is pointing where it looks like it's pointing, you need to start protecting what's yours. Quietly and legally, now." He walked me through it. My father had passed in 2018 and left me a 4-acre parcel outside of Lewisburg that had been in the family since the 70s. I'd never done the formal paperwork to establish it fully in my own name beyond the original deed transfer. Paul said to get that squared away immediately. He flagged my 401(a) contributions from the 6 years before Jill and I were married, and a small commercial lot I'd bought in 2009 with my own savings that a tire shop had been renting month to month ever since. All of it premarital. All of it mine under Tennessee law. All of it needing to be clearly provably documented as separate property before anyone filed anything anywhere. Over the next 10 days, working quietly during business hours, I did everything Paul said. Every document notarized, every date stamped, every asset traced back to its source with paperwork that would hold up in any room. I thought that was the end of what I needed to do. I had no idea I was about to go one step further, and that the next thing I did would be the move that actually unraveled everything she'd been planning. Here's something I'd learned about Jill in 11 years that I hadn't fully put into words until that spring. She had a particular relationship with numbers. Not extravagance. She wasn't a spender, but she had this way of doing math in her head the second a figure entered the room. You'd mention what something sold for or what a relative inherited, and you'd see her eyes go slightly unfocused for just a moment, like a calculator running behind the screen. I used to think it was practicality. By April, I had a different word for it. So I built her a number to run through that calculator. I had a brokerage account I'd opened 2 years earlier, my own funds, premarital savings, nothing Jill would recognize as part of our joint finances. The actual balance was just under $19,000. Not nothing, but not what I was about to make it look like. My financial advisor, Deborah Strand, 48, at a firm in Brentwood, had given me a standard projection sheet the previous fall, the kind of document every investment office generates by the thousands for planning conversations. It showed a 10-year growth estimate based on different contribution scenarios. The highest scenario column projected a balance of just over $160,000. The sheet was clearly marked at the top, projected portfolio estimate, illustrative purposes only, small print, plain language, the kind of fine print anyone reads if they're actually reading. I printed that page. I put it inside my accordion file in the home office, the one with the tax returns and property records and insurance policies, tucked behind the 2021 folder in a way that was visible if you were looking through it, but not something I'd normally pull out and wave around. I didn't hide it. I didn't highlight it. I just left it there, in my own file, in my own office, in a spot Jill had every reason to dig through if she was looking for something else, and let her curiosity carry her a step further than she should have gone. I felt sick doing it. I want to be honest about that. This was not who I thought I was, but I kept hearing those 2 words from the kitchen table, initial filing, and I needed to know what she believed she was walking away with. 5 days later, I noticed the accordion file had been moved. I keep it flush against the left side of my desk. It was flush against the right. The projection sheet was still inside, but slightly bent at the corner the way paper gets when you've taken it out and put it back in a hurry. Jill changed after that, not in a way you'd notice if you didn't know what you were watching for. The secretive energy from the outside calls relaxed. She started humming while she loaded the dishwasher. She hadn't done that since the fall. She suggested we go look at kitchen renovation ideas at a showroom off Hillsborough Pike just on a whim, something we hadn't done in years. She stood in front of a quartz countertop display and ran her fingers along the edge with an expression I recognized from early in our marriage, that quiet look of imagining what something could become. She thought she knew what the future held. She'd found the number she was building her next chapter around. The financial questions stopped completely after that. She didn't need them anymore. She thought she already knew where everything was. On a Thursday in late May, I came home from a site visit to find a white envelope on the kitchen island with my name on it in Jill's handwriting. She was sitting at the table with her arms crossed and a look I'd never seen before on her face, composure sitting on top of something else. Anticipation, maybe. "I think you should sit down," she said. I already knew what was inside before I touched it. The paperwork had been filed with the Williamson County Circuit Court. Her attorney was a man named Gary Osmond, sharp presentation, the kind of lawyer who leads with big numbers and expects them to land. Her proposed settlement listed equitable division of what she described as joint marital assets, citing, by name, an investment account she believed held 6 figures. She had no idea the account she was naming held $19,000. I set the papers down evenly. "We'll let the lawyers sort it out," I said. She looked almost annoyed that I wasn't shaken. The mediation was 3 weeks later at Gary Osmond's office downtown. Paul came in with everything organized: account opening documentation, funding source traced to premarital savings, and the projection sheet itself, with the illustrative purposes only header enlarged and clearly readable across a table. Gary Osmond opened by citing the investment account and the balance his client had reason to believe reflected 6 figures. Paul slid a folder across the table without any expression. "There's been a significant misunderstanding about this account," Paul said. His voice was patient, almost gentle. "I'd like to walk through it carefully, because I don't want anyone in this room to be embarrassed." He laid it out piece by piece. The account was real, opened in 2022 in Curtis Hale's name only, funded entirely from documented premarital savings. Current verifiable balance, $18,700. And then, separately, here was the document Mrs. Hale appeared to have reviewed. A projected growth illustration, clearly labeled as an estimate of potential 10-year returns under ideal conditions, never presented to her as an actual current balance, never referenced between the parties at any point. "My client made no representations about this account to his wife," Paul said. "If she accessed private documents without his knowledge and drew an incorrect conclusion from clearly labeled fine print, that's not a misrepresentation on his part, that's a misreading on hers." I watched Jill's face across the table. The color went out of it in stages, like a lamp dimming on a slow dial instead of a switch. She looked at the sheet, she looked at Gary Osmond, she looked at me. "You did this on purpose," she said, low enough that it almost didn't carry across the table. I didn't deny it, there was no point. "I left a piece of paper in a file folder," I said. "You went through my private documents, drew your own conclusion from something you were never shown and I never discussed with you, and built your entire settlement strategy around a number I never once confirmed. You did that on your own." Gary Osmond asked for a recess. When they came back, the investment account had been dropped from the proposed settlement entirely. What remained was what had always legally actually existed. Marital property divided according to Tennessee's equitable distribution statutes, with every premarital asset I'd documented weeks earlier fully protected and untouchable. Jill left that mediation with exactly what the law had always said she was entitled to, nothing more. About 3 weeks after, I got a call from Doug Pritchard, 44, a guy I'd played church league softball with for a few years before I'd let the schedule get away from me. We were friendly, not close, but the kind of acquaintance who stays in your orbit through mutual people. He asked to meet for lunch and said there was something he thought I deserved to know. He slid his phone across the table at the restaurant without much preamble. Text messages. Between Jill and a man named Brett Callahan, 40, a commercial real estate broker in Cool Springs. I'd never met him, never heard his name until that moment. The messages went back 5 months. Before the passcode, before the outside calls, back to when I still believed I was living in the marriage I'd always thought I had. One message, sent 2 weeks before she filed, read, "Once the settlement's done, I'll have what I need for the down payment. Just need to get through mediation and we're finally free." Brett's reply, "You've got this. We start fresh the second it clears." Start fresh. An exit she'd been mapping for months, funded in her imagination by a number on a projection sheet she'd found in a drawer while I wasn't home. There were messages from the night of the mediation too. Jill telling Brett the number had collapsed, that something had gone wrong, that the account wasn't what she thought it was. Brett's response came the following morning. 6 words. "You got played. Figure it out." After that, his side of the thread went silent. The future they'd been sketching together. The down payment, the fresh start, all of it, evaporated the same night the settlement figure did. He hadn't been building a life with her. He'd been building a plan on top of a payout that never existed. The second the money disappeared, so did he. I handed Doug his phone back. I thanked him. I meant it more than I think I was able to communicate right then. Doug's source had less restraint than he did, and within a few weeks the outline of what had actually happened had made its way through enough of our mutual circle that the story Jill had been telling, that I'd been hiding assets, that I'd blindsided her, that she'd just been protecting herself, fell apart under its own weight once people understood the real timeline. Jill's younger sister Paula called me in July. She said she'd been getting her information entirely from Jill's version of things and hadn't thought to question it. She apologized. She said she'd sensed something was wrong for a while but hadn't said anything. That call meant more to me than I expected it to. The divorce was finalized in mid-July, 4.5 months from the first time I'd noticed that phone go face down in the living room. I kept the house. I kept the Lewisburg property and the commercial lot and everything I'd documented before a single piece of paper had ever been filed anywhere. Jill kept her car, her personal accounts, and a settlement that reflected what was always legally hers. My brother Keith drove up from Chattanooga the first weekend after everything was done, and we spent a Saturday pulling out the old rose bushes along the back fence. The ones Jill had planted 5 years ago that neither of us had ever really kept up with. Hard, dirty work. It felt like exactly the right thing to be doing. People ask me sometimes whether I feel guilty about the projection sheet, about leaving it somewhere she'd find it. Here's what I know. I never told Jill that account held $160,000. I never told her it held anything. I never showed her that document or mentioned it or pointed her toward it in any way. I left a piece of paper inside my own file in my own home office, and she went through my private records without my knowledge, took out a document she had no authorization to access, misread clearly labeled fine print, and built her entire legal strategy around a number she had manufactured entirely in her own mind. She wasn't betrayed by a trap. She was undone by her own certainty that she already knew everything worth knowing. I think about that projection sheet sometimes. The way she must have felt when she found it. All the recalculation happening behind her eyes. All the possibilities suddenly opening up. And then I think about Brett's 6 words the morning after mediation. You got played. Figure it out. Neither of them got played by me. They got played by the same thing, the assumption that the future was already settled, that wanting it badly enough made it real. The house is quiet now, a different kind of quiet than those months when I was lying awake next to someone I no longer recognized, trying to identify a shape I couldn't quite see yet. That was a suspicious quiet. This one is just mine. That's enough. If this story hit close to home, hit that like button and subscribe to Quiet Family Revenge. There's more where this came from, and you'll want to be here when it arrives.